Into the Sports Opinion Log, and in this video, NFL Super Wild Card Weekend. The journey continues. You sports fans nationwide are down with all things NFL, AFC, or NFC. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel and press that bell icon to stay notified for the next upcoming future videos. Master of the 6-point shovel pass, let's get it going with this video. If there was ever any pressure to win their first playoff game, the weight of the world was on the shoulders of Lamar Jackson, but he came through. The Ravens advanced 20-13 over the Tennessee Titans as Derrick Henry, fresh off his $50 million contract, rushes for only 40 yards. That's correct, sports fans nationwide. You heard me right. Only 40 yards. But Lamar Jackson, he moves on. 0 for 2. No more. And the weight of the media and the sports fans nationwide on this young man, I'm glad he was able to come through, even though I was going for the Titans and Derrick Henry to make it happen, but they let me down. So Lamar Jackson and the Ravens move on, but let's see what kind of history was made in that victory. When Lamar Jackson broke open for that 48-yard touchdown run, that was the key play of the game, that you could just see that the tone was going to be way different than his previous losses. Let's check out what this young man did. He joins Dan Marino and Patrick Mahomes as the only players in NFL history with an MVP and 1+ playoff win by the end of their 23rd year. The Ravens, 11-6, are the only team in NFL history with a winning record on the road in the postseason. That's crazy. The Ravens are also 6-0 in road wild card games, the most such wins without a loss in the NFL. And Lamar Jackson is the first quarterback rushing leader to defeat the NFL's rushing leader in the playoffs since Miami's David Woodley defeated New Jersey Jet Freeman McNeil in the 1982 AFC Championship game. The Ravens are also 14-1 in games in which Lamar Jackson rushes for 90+ yards, including the playoffs. Their only loss in 2019 divisional round versus Tennessee. And speaking of Tennessee, this is the 5th meeting between the Titans and Ravens in the postseason, and the road team has won each matchup. That's a good did you know. And Lamar Jackson is the 5th reigning MVP to get a playoff rematch against the team to defeat them in the playoffs the previous season, and he's the only one to win the rematch. Wow. So tip of the cap to Lamar Jackson and getting that first playoff win. Now on to the next game. Lamar Jackson also has joined Colin Kaepernick as the only quarterbacks in the Super Bowl era with 100+ yards rushing in multiple playoff games. And how about the young rookie, J.K. Dobbins? 1+ rushing touchdown in 7 straight games, including playoffs, tied with Stan Fritz, 1975, and Curtis Dickey, 1980, for the second longest streak by a rookie since the 1970 merger. That's why you need the sports historian, sports fans, so we don't miss out on these wonderful notes. And Lamar Jackson's 48-yard rushing touchdown in the second quarter was the second longest run by a quarterback in a playoff game in NFL history. Well, did you know this, sports fans nationwide? There have been 27 quarterbacks to start their playoff career 0-2 in the Super Bowl era. Peyton and Eli Manning are the only such quarterbacks to go on to win a Super Bowl. I don't know. Are the stars aligning for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens to get to and win the Super Bowl? Pump the brakes. Hold the phone. Just not yet. Saints over the Bears, 21-9. Not really a shocker because the Bears suck on offense, and they pretty much shot themselves in the foot the entire game. So let's just run through the history, of course, being made by Drew Brees and what could potentially be his last season. How the Saints own the Bears. The Bears have lost 7 straight games versus the Saints, including the playoffs. Their last win, Week 15 in 2008. During this time, Drew Brees, a perfect 6-0 with 12 passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions versus the Bears over the last 10 seasons, including playoffs. So maybe the Bears are hoping that Drew Brees does call it a career after this season. Drew Brees is also the sixth player in NFL history with 35 plus passing touchdowns in the postseason. And Drew Brees has 1 plus passing touchdown in 17 straight postseason games, the third longest streak since 1950. Last but not least, saving the best for last, my and your Pittsburgh Steelers getting eliminated by the Cleveland Browns, 48-37 final score. And, I'm glad I had the time to sit down and watch the game, at least not in its entirety, because definitely after the first quarter, you're just like, what the fuck is going on here? Down, 21, 28-0, 35-10. The tone was set when the ball was hiked and Big Ben is kicking it around and the Browns falling it for the touchdown, and the Browns and Chubb and Kareem Hunt just pretty much had their way with the defense. Chase Claypool, talking his smack. Juju Smith-Schuster talking his smack. But at the end of the day, it's all fun and games. And, the Browns move on, and I'm not even mad at that. Like, sometimes what doesn't make you laugh makes you cry. And all I can really do is just sit there and just like really laugh like, oh shit, as Big Ben becomes the first NFL quarterback in history to have 4 passing touchdowns and 4 interceptions in a playoff game. That's pretty crazy. And of course, a whole lot of history behind the Browns winning a playoff game and advancing. Like, again, being a sports historian, I respect the history of the game, whether it's my team celebrating and moving on or being shown the door. Will the Steelers continue to keep Big Ben? Who knows? I just think it's time to move on, honestly, at this point. But let's see. I mean, like, again, they started the season 11-0, went 1-6 the rest of the way. Defense could be better. Lack of a running game. Big Ben aired it out to like the umpteenth power last night, and got him back in it, but again, the defense just gave up that rushing play to Chubb, and that pretty much sealed the deal. So let me seal the deal on the Steelers season by recapping the history in this game. Big Ben, 47, surpasses Tom Brady for most completions in a playoff game in the Super Bowl era, and at 68 pass attempts, surpasses Hall of Famer Steve Young for the most pass attempts in a playoff game in the Super Bowl era. The Browns have a road win in Pittsburgh for the first time since Week 5 of 2003, when Baker Mayfield was a mere child, 8 years old. Big Ben, 47 of 68, 501 yards. Wow, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. But Baker Mayfield, man on a mission, 21 of 34, 263 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And the Browns have won a playoff game, like mentioned, for the first time since 1994. Gotta respect the history, man. Gotta respect the history. And Big Ben, speaking of history, 34, surpassed Terry Bradshaw for the most passing touchdowns in Steelers postseason history. Cleveland is also the 3rd team in the Super Bowl era to break a playoff drought of over 15 seasons, the only such team to win their first playoff game that season. Wow, they're also 7-0 in games with 2 takeaways this season, including playoffs. The Browns have also scored 40-plus points for the 4th time this season, tied for the most games in a single season in franchise history, including the playoffs. And despite the loss, the Steelers had 3 wide receivers with 70-plus receiving yards, their most in a playoff game since 1950. And again, the history. The Browns scored 28 points in the first quarter, the most in a first quarter in a playoff game since the 1970 merger. And the Browns are the first team in the last 30 years to have 25-plus points and 3-plus takeaways in a single quarter of a playoff game. They dominated, total team effort. And Kareem Hunt, the first Browns running back with 2 rushing touchdowns in a playoff game since Ernest Biner in the 1985 divisional round. I gotta respect the history, man. Like, for real. The Browns' fumble recovery in the end zone on the first offensive snap was their first defensive touchdown in a playoff game since the 1987 divisional round. We move on to the divisional round Saturday, January 16th. Rams taking on the Green Bay Packers. Look for the Packers to win. Baltimore taking on Buffalo. This will be good. This will be good. I mean, like, whew, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, like, Buffalo's at home. I'm going to go with Buffalo on this one. Yeah, Buffalo. Let's go with Buffalo. And then Sunday, Cleveland Browns taking on the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. Look for the Chiefs to advance. And Tampa Bay Buccaneers with AB and Brady taking on the Saints. This is going to be one hell of a matchup. The 40-plus club still hanging around, still getting the job done. It was earlier today breaking news that Doug Peterson has been fired by the Eagles. Wow, been with them for 5 years, led them to their first and only franchise Super Bowl in the third year, and he gets unceremoniously shown the door, especially with the thing with Carson Wentz, who, like the prophet had decreed, was never going to really truly be the quarterback that they were hoping he would be. But yeah, hopefully the future will look good with Jalen Hurts. So we'll see what happens from there. And speaking of what I want, this is it, folks. Tonight is the night. NCAA College Football National Championship. Of course, as usual, Alabama Crimson Tide will be taking on the Ohio State Buckeyes. So I definitely don't like them, but I respect their program and how they get the job done. The prophet shall decree, his last decree of the NCAA college football season, that Alabama will once again be national champions. Thank you all very much for tuning in. Until next time, sports fans nationwide, Lex Anderson signing out.